I've played a lot of games with zombies in them. Some would say too many games with zombies. I would say that. It's a genre that ran out of juice a long time ago, completely satiated by the moaning undead with a lust for brains. These titles did very well, and some of them are great, like The Last of Us with its gripping characters and excellent third-person shooting. There was Left 4 Dead, a co-op first-person masterclass in round-based zombie survival. Dead Rising made the killing of the undead fun in a zombie-infected mall, filled with stereotypical American culture, sexual innuendos, and crazy weaponry. But what these games never got right was the stakes and sheer anxiety, not in the way that The Last of Us gets us invested into the characters of Ellie and Joel, or in the way that a potential high score might in Left 4 Dead. No, Project Zomboid tries another approach, an approach that had me instead fearing for my life as I clung to my mouse and keyboard in a bathroom with tens of infected outside the door. Hi,
The zombies are coming.
But you can just simply call me Amazon. Today we play and review Project Zomboid, an early access title from the dev team called IndieStone, a fitting name for a company that has you stone the infected to death in their indie game. Well, the first and most obvious question to answer is, what is Project Zomboid? Well, Project Zomboid is an isometric zombie survival simulator. That is the simplest description I can come up with without diluting the game too much. So, let's expand. Starting with the end. Zombie survival simulator. This might seem obvious at first, but I really had to think pretty hard not to just call it a zombie survival game, because it is. But this game does go above and beyond to make this zombie survival game into a full-blown survival simulator. It goes so far you have to think about not sweating too much by wearing just enough not to get scratched or bitten too easily or get overheated and risk running out of water too quickly. This min-maxing takes Project Zomboid from a simple turn-based game like Call of Duty Zombies mode or fun-based killing fun park like in the caves of Dead Island to a deep and frankly overwhelming simulation-style game. This pretty nicely leads us into just that. Let's take a look at the gameplay of Project Zomboid in the form of 3 of my recent playthroughs, and a bonus 4th one that I played with a good friend of mine online. Every single completely vanilla game of Project Zomboid starts the exact same way. A short text setting up the pretty dark objective of the game. It consists of 3 lines. The first one being, "These are the end times." It tells us one thing. These are the end times, the apocalypse that will be our end. It fades out and the line, "There was no hope of survival," fades into its place. This game will not hold your hand or be in any way happy. It's a hopeless and depressing game that will be hard. Maybe not to the extent of the sentence, "There was no hope of survival." There's some hope that after this next sentence will be quickly extinguished. "This is how you died," is the last sentence shown on screen. You will die, no matter how hard you try. This game is not about making it through the apocalypse. Project Zomboid is about making it through the day. A text fades in underneath it, prompting us to act, taking us into the game. Every time you spawn into a vanilla version of Project Zomboid, you will be put into a house without any zombies. This game isn't that hard, at least. The first house is where you find your first weapon, often a piece of kitchenware in the form of a knife or frying pan. You'll find some food and probably a couple of books to read. This first house gives you, as the player, a false sense of security. The game might even seem fairly lenient in the first house you walk around in and loot. But never forget what lurks outside of your now safe house. As soon as you tread outside of your seemingly safe spawn, you will be hit with the reality that zombies in Project Zomboid actually pose a real threat, unlike the ones in other games such as DayZ or its contemporaries. These zombies will hunt you down and you have to outmaneuver them to feel safe. If you spawn in a house on the edge of a city, you will stand a better chance of this, because of the relative lack of threats. But if you're surrounded, your best shot is to just run around and hope the threat will forget about you. This is the gameplay loop of the first day of your Zomboid journey. sneaking around looking for bad loot, maybe a digital clock to keep the time, maybe a backpack to not go over encumbered for long, or maybe a key to a car without gas. This will be your goal for the next couple of days of the game. Get a car. Cars in Project Zomboid are very, very important. They both act as the safest and fastest ways to move around the world, but also as a huge backpack to lug around tons of items. This then leads to the last and longest part of Project Zomboid. Loot, survive, loot, survive. I recorded 3 separate playthroughs, all of which played out in this exact way, with a bit of a twist of my own making. I died early in every single playthrough. I respected every death I faced, because it was always my fault. I did something stupid. I played for fun instead of playing to survive for as long as possible. Looted a location I didn't have the resources for, or I played with too little fear of the zombies. Don't let my really bad ability to play this game for the last couple of playthroughs color the way you play the game. I have played this game for a long time, and when I made it a couple of months into a single playthrough, I had a lot of fun. Not in the way that finding your first car in this game or hitting a stomp knee in Melee, it was rewarding me for the time I put into it. This leads me to this, a short playthrough that gets an entire section of the video, the multiplayer, but most importantly, the potential this game has. First of all, this game is just made for expansion, even if this game has multiple games in terms of features inside of it. If you somehow run out of things to do, you could just go to the workshop that is perfectly integrated into the game, adding new locations, new weapons, new types of zombies, and even completely new features like bikes or even horses. A modding-friendly game has a bright future ahead of it, not letting even the 1000 plus hour players leave its community without feeling that they might have missed out on the potential of this game, even without modding, something I'll speak on a bit later. The multiplayer, however, something that is easy enough to set up, even I could manage, is completely and utterly underrated. I haven't joined a public server yet, mostly because I would want to start from the beginning, but I would absolutely love to. Project Zomboid should have blown up when it opened its doors on multiplayer a couple of months back. I was ready to see all the biggest streamers jump on and work together and against each other like the resurgence of Rust not so long ago, or to roleplay and create an unlimited flow of funny moments to then go back to being obscure. But this never happened, even though it really should have. There are probably a lot of good reasons for this: the incredibly high curve of difficulty, the lack of a real goal outside of surviving, and the last but regrettably probably also most importantly, the presentation. Some, if not most people, would dog on this game's graphics. A pretty low blow in my opinion. This game couldn't really exist in any other engine without being dumbed down to the level of DayZ or that one Xbox exclusive I don't remember the name of. This isn't me being harsh with those games. They had to compromise to make a presentable and graphically interesting game, and they're really successful. A challenge I wouldn't want to face if I've ever made a game of my own. But don't take this little rant the wrong way. I for one like the isometric perspective that this game chose. I will look at this game's graphics from the perspective of today, because this game is constantly being updated with new fixes. The latest addition that made a significant improvement in the presentation department is the new sound and the way they flow in the game world. The audio now sounds realistic in more ways than the audio itself. It now applies different effects to your gun shots if you're indoors, making the guns sound even more powerful. It also regrettably added a jump scare sound when a zombie is in your face when you least expect it. But that's just it. When you know when to expect a jump scare, it's no longer a jump scare. It's just an annoying sound to take you out of its otherwise great immersion. Also, I really didn't like the music. Sure, it fits, it's depressing and unsettling, but I just don't really enjoy it that much outside of just that. Project Zomboid is chock full of features, which is a good thing, but also a double-edged sword. You will keep on learning new things for a long time if you don't go and main a single playstyle. Something I tend to do in these types of games. I'll give you a great example of this. I almost always pick the lumberjack as my starting build. It gives you a perk that makes my go-to weapon, an axe, even better. Why would I even try something else after that? I found something I enjoy and I kept playing it. This isn't even completely my own fault. It's just human nature to try and perfect all the fun out of things. We use the most meta weapons in CSGO and main the best characters in Smash. This is a whole video in itself, so let's instead look at just some of the features I barely touched. This game has a very deep set of systems for the engineer class of players, a set of players I have never even seen. This player base has some really good stuff to play with though, from the mechanic, repairing and tuning specific parts of a car for the best performance to straight up geniuses making timed explosives and traps. The deepest I've made it into this subset of mechanics is changing the tire of a car and hot wiring a couple of vehicles, a feat that can easily be done if you pick the burglar starting build. There's also a more than acceptable base building mechanic, a feature that takes so much time, effort and pure leveling to do. I've only done it twice. I know that this game's endgame is what this is all about, but the fact that barricading windows and doors with planks is more than enough to last the entire game is just a shame. This nicely segues into the fact that this game has so much, yet nothing to do. This isn't an easy problem to solve without getting in the way of your player. This game is about surviving and it should stay that way, but with a couple of changes and fixes, this game could have been even better. Project Zomboid has a pacing problem. Before you get at me with countless accusations of similar survival titles that never end, I want you to really think about it. Let's take Minecraft as an example, the greatest survival game of all time. I had this exact problem in its alpha and beta. There was no goal big enough to play for more than a couple of hours on every world. You'd gather some materials and get comfortable in your semi-self-sustaining base. This is where Project Zomboid stands right now. What then made Minecraft infinitely better was the addition of the Ender Dragon and its boss fight. It's a pretty lofty goal with some pretty heavy grinding needed to obtain it, but it was right there, always taunting you with its existence. This is what Project Zomboid needs. A seemingly arbitrary goal to do just to put a reason to all the gathering and looting outside of a number at the end of the game telling you how long you survived. This brings me to the balance of Project Zomboid. The balance should outweigh the focus on realism and features, which this game just doesn't bother with enough. I don't blame the developers for trying to make Project Zomboid into the most lifelike depiction of the zombie apocalypse. It's the game that we've all imagined as the perfect zombie game, with features for every single object. What if you could use a napkin item to suppress the sound of your coughs when your character has gotten a cold after being outside in the rain? Well, they added it, and it's awesome. But why did you not think longer about some of the other stuff? Like the fact that even though guns are pretty plentiful in the depicted US state, maybe you should tone it down to one gun every 10 or so houses, not one in every 2 houses. Even if you set the game's loot setting to the most insane levels of depravity and scarceness, you will find enough canned food in a couple of supermarkets and houses to last you the entire winter. Not having to engage with the game's many ways to make food, using anything from the fishing and foraging to planting and farming dozens of plants. Make me use your systems. Take me out of my comfortable axe-wielding, canned dog food eating, car-driving playstyle. In the late game, you can easily just forget about the zombie threat in the surrounding area, because they don't walk around enough to pose a threat after clearing them out. Why not add a horde that sometimes walks straight through the map, making zombie defenses a meaningful addition, not just a reason to keep playing the game, or just to have a cool-looking base. Instead of adding another huge city or map update, add a short randomized quest to find out who is shooting his gun outside your base every night, attracting zombies. Something simple would be enough. But anything at all is absolutely needed if this game is to survive being a single player or co-op title without PvP interaction. I say that because, well, I think I've talked about what this game could be with a bigger multiplayer community. With all this being said, I absolutely love Project Zomboid to its rotten, infected core. It gave me hours upon hours of fun initially, but that quickly dissipated into a slow and steady decline into boredom. I recall a save I had not so long ago. That save I talked about at the start of the video. I had been looking for seeds to grow in my growing field of crops in a set of storage lots. I was late and my character was tired, so I went to bed, only to be woken up by my generator that was always constantly humming right outside of my bedroom wall, exploding, breaking the wall between me and the outside world, inflicting deadly wounds. This was an amazing moment for me, seeing all the different systems moving and working together in unison. This leads me to the reason why this game is so good. Project Zomboid is the best depiction of the zombie apocalypse, the zombies being one of its greatest strengths. Project Zomboid uses the zombies in unison with its huge handcrafted open world, its many gameplay systems, and many threats outside of the zombies like weather and food to make Project Zomboid into a cohesive experience that could not only act as a great simulator of the zombie apocalypse, but could also have acted as one of the last few years' gaming trends in the stead of Rust and Among Us. But because of its ludicrously high learning curve and unappealing graphics, Project Zomboid will stand outside of this category of games, played by only the biggest fans of the genre and survival game fanatics. Well, until XQC plays it and skyrockets the game to the #1 spot, that is. Thanks for watching. This video took longer than expected, is what I have been saying in all of these after credits sequences the last few videos. It's entirely my own fault. I keep procrastinating and thinking I'm faster than I actually am, so I'll rectify that right now. There will be a video on this channel every month, at least. If there are 2 or maybe 3, that would be awesome, but I can't promise you that. So 1 video every month is what I'm promising. Also, if you're a Patreon subscriber, sorry that Patreon is really backward sometimes. I say that because I've been having some really bad problems with the site these last few weeks. But let's not talk about that. Instead, I'll just say I have emailed them and they responded with an automated message. Last but not least, I have been really tired these last few weeks. So if I seem that way, it's because I am. But never mind that. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.